Okay? Good morning to all of us, especially to our instructor, Ma'am May. This is the report of Group 1, the Treaty of Westphalia. The Peace of Westphalia was the treaty that ended the 30-year war in Europe in 1618 to 1648. In fact, it was two treaties that first signed in the city of Minster. Was formally an agreement between the Holy Roman Emperor and the King of France. The second sign in the nearby city of Osnabrück was between the Emperor and the King of Sweden. Together, these two treaties were meant to settle the conflicts, especially conflicts over religion, that had kept Europe at war for a generation. The kings of Sweden and France pledged to guarantee the term of this treaty, which in the effect made in a pan-European peace treaty, the first of its kind in a long sequence of such settlements. Reproduced here and excerpts from treaty signed in Munster between France, the Holy Roman Emperor, and their responsive allies. This is Europe in 1648 and historical background. The peace treaty was a series of peace treaties signed between October 1648 in the Westphalian cities. Osnabrück and Munster ended the 30-year war and the 88-year wars. The 30-year war was a sense of war in Central Europe between 1618 to 1648. Initially, a war between various Protestant and Catholic states in the fragmented Holy Roman Empire. It developed into a conflict involving most of the great powers. The 80-year War of Dutch War of Independence in 1568 to 1648 was a revolt in the 17 provinces against the political and religious hegemony of Philip II of Spain, the sovereign of the Habsburg Netherlands. Recognizing the Peace of Augsburg on 1555, where Christians and non-dominant denominations were guaranteed the right to practice their faith. According to the Peace of Westphalia, all parties would recognize the Peace of Augsburg of 1555. Christians of non-dominant and denominations were guaranteed the right to practice their faith, and the exclusive sovereignty of each party over its lands, people, and agent abroad was recognized. Multiple territorial adjustments were also decided. Okay, I will give the table for my next companion.
As my colleague said, the conflict quickly spread across Europe, involving various alliances and foreign powers. It resulted in widespread devastation, with millions of deaths and significant destruction of property. And there are three main disputes of the 30 years war in Europe. So number one, there is the religious conflict. The primary reason for the treaty was to bring an end to the religious conflict between the Protestant and Catholic state. The war had been fueled by religious tensions, with both sides seeking to establish dominance and suppress to other faith. The treaty aimed to establish religious tolerance and grant freedom of worship to various Protestant denominations. Political stability. Number two, the war had destabilized Europe, with different states vying for power and influence. The treaty aimed to restore political stability by establishing a balance of power among European states. This concept ensured that no single state could become too dominant and threaten the peace and security of others. Number three, territorial dispute. The war had also involved territorial dispute, with various states seeking to expand their territories or maintain control over contested regions. The treaty aimed to resolve this dispute by reaffirming the principle of territorial integrity. It stated that borders should be respected and not subject to arbitrary changes, providing a framework for resolving future territorial conflict peacefully.
Okay, so here are the agreements and outputs of the treaty. First one is the peace and religious tolerance. It is one of the main outputs of the Treaty of Westphalia. The treaty recognized the principle of coex regio and eius religio, meaning that the ruler of a territory would determine its religion. So this allowed for the coexistence of different faiths within a state and ended the religious persecution that had characterized the war. The treaty also granted freedom of worship to various Protestant denominations, ensuring religious tolerance and paving the way for future religious freedoms. The second one was the balance of power. The Treaty of Westphalia aimed to restore the political stability by establishing a balance of power among the European states. It recognized the sovereignty and independence of each state, ensuring that no single state could become too dominant and threaten the peace and security of others. This concept of balance of power became a fundamental principle in international relations and influenced diplomatic practices for few centuries to come. It laid the foundation for a system where states would seek alliances and engage in diplomatic negotiations to maintain a balance of power, preventing any one state from becoming too powerful. And lastly, the third one, the territorial integrity. The treaty addressed territorial disputes that had been a major cause of war. It reaffirmed the principle of territorial integrity, stating that borders should be respected and not subject to arbitrary changes. This meant that states had to recognize each other's borders and refrain from aggressive expansion to annexation of territories. The last one, the territorial integrity. The treaty addressed territorial disputes that had been a major cause of the war. It reaffirmed the principle of territorial integrity, stating that borders should be respected and not subject to arbitrary changes. This meant that states had to recognize each other's borders and refrain from aggressive expansion to annexation of territories. By resolving territorial disputes and establishing clear boundaries, the treaty provided a framework for resolving future conflicts peacefully and contributed to the stability of Europe. So overall, the Treaty of Westphalia resulted in agreements that promoted peace, religious tolerance, balance of power, and territorial integrity. These outputs were crucial in ending the devastating 30 Years' War and establishing a new framework for diplomacy and state relations in Europe. That's all. Thank you.
Oleg said about the Treaty of Westphalia that they reports about the historical background, on how they make the Treaty of Westphalia and what is the content of that treaty. So in today's I will also discuss the political landscape, the effect of the Treaty of Westphalia is mentioned from now on in this generation. So our answer here is about sovereignty and non-interference. One of the key effects of the Treaty of Westphalia is the principle of state sovereignty and non-interference in international affairs of other states. The treaty established the idea that each state has the right to govern itself without external interference. So this is happening right now about nation to nation, that they have the rights to govern their nation. And also, the treaty established the idea that each state has the right to govern itself without external interference. So, as I mentioned a while ago about nation, this principle continues to be a cornerstone of international law and has shaped the modern nation-state system. It has also to the recognition of state sovereignty as a fundamental and principle, which has implication for issues such as territorial integrity, self-determination, and non-intervention in domestic affairs. So that's the number one. And the number two is nationalism and ethno-religious identity. So this Treaty of Westphalia play a significant role in shaping the concept of nationalism and ethno-religious identity among us. By recognizing principle of ius religio, the treaty allowed for the coexistence of different faiths within a state. This contribute to the formation of religiously diverse society and foster a sense of identity based on religion within the individual state. So all religious belief here is have a free will to do what their faith is, and so over time this evolved into a broader sense of national state. So this is our report for Treaty